to bring today's episode to the podcast talking all about egg health when we're on the journey to conceive. If we have low AMH and or high FSH, premature ovarian insufficiency, diminished ovarian reserve, repeat pregnancy loss, we may have been told that we have poor egg quality. But what can we do to improve the chances of pregnancy success? There's a lot of information on the internet talking all about these generalized recommendations to improve egg quality. Today, we are breaking down all those myths and giving you the exact steps you can take right now to improve the quality of your eggs so then you can go on to improve pregnancy success. Let's go. Hey, Katy, excited to have you back on the podcast.
Oh, great to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. Today we're talking all about egg quality. So this is something that I think people get very focused on, and there's a lot of blogs and podcasts and tons of information about what you can do with your egg quality. Our whole take on this is we're going to be giving you some recommendations today, but it's super important to take a personalized, customized approach to this because you can do all those generalized recommendations on the internet, follow blogs and podcasts, but they may not be right for you. So you need to really dig deeper. But the biggest takeaway from this is there's things you can do to improve the quality of your eggs and your egg health. And that's super empowering. So let's talk about, okay, so first of all, what is egg quality?
Yeah, so egg quality is essentially it's thinking about the health of our eggs and literally the quality of those eggs. And there's a lot of misconception here because I hear all the time from people, I have poor egg quality, I have poor egg quality. And what they mean by that is they've got low AMH and they've been told somewhere along the line that's been interpreted as they've got poor egg quality. So AMH is not a marker of egg quality. And those two things are very different. You know, we will talk about AMH today, but that's one of the misconceptions that I often hear. So, you know, when we're thinking about egg health, the two, I guess, fundamental things that we're considering are the quality and the quantity, because we do have a finite number of eggs, and so the quantity is important, of course. But the thing that declines with age, as we'll go on to talk about today, is the quality. So we don't tend to completely run out of eggs before our fertility goes downhill. And the reason our fertility goes downhill before we've completely run out of eggs is because, or it has the capacity to go downhill, is because the quality of those eggs that starts to diminish. Or that's one of the things that happens anyway. So it's really in focusing on the egg quality. You know, there's nothing we can do to increase the quantity, right? That's written in the stars, and that's we have the number of eggs we have, and that's that. But we can focus on the quantity, and we know that it only takes one egg, right? Just like with IVF clinics, they often talk about, well, you only need one sperm, so we'll just choose the best one. It's the same with an egg. We don't get the choice of choosing the best egg. So what we can do is then actually work on the egg health. So to come back to your question about what actually is equality, then really it's thinking about the eggs, because the egg is the one half of the magic formula that actually goes on to create the baby. And so it's the thing that carries the genes that need to be transcribed into an embryo, into a fetus. And so it's got the chromosomes in it, right? So it's the thing that holds the genetic coding that will create that baby. And so when we're thinking about egg quality, we're thinking about, okay, well, is this chromosomally normal? And a lot of the times when we're thinking about things being chromosomally normal, we're thinking about them in terms of, if you've been through a round of IVF, then you're probably familiar with that terminology, because we're thinking about about embryos being chromosomally normal. And so you might have heard the terminology euploid, like a euploid embryo or an aneuploid embryo. So euploid typically refers to normal, and aneuploid might be chromosomally abnormal. So quite a bit of terminology to sift through there, but in a nutshell, that's what we're thinking about when we're thinking about egg quality.
Yeah, and our whole piece on this is the mitochondria, and I've done some podcast episodes on the mitochondria, so you can definitely go and check those out. And so let's just talk about why the mitochondria, our mitochondria health is so important for egg health and our overall health, and what that actually means.
Yeah, absolutely. So the mitochondria are like the almost our cellular batteries, right? They're the kind of the powerhouse of the cell. And within that, the reason that's important for egg health is because eggs have carry a high proportion of mitochondria. So they're quite energy heavy. And for that reason, if we concentrate on mitochondrial health, then we can, by proxy, help to support egg quality as well. And when we're thinking about what I just mentioned around it's egg quality that tends to diminish with age, that's because mitochondria are very susceptible to the aging process, right? And so our bodies, our cells naturally age, that's inevitable. But as part of that, it's our mitochondrial health that can make a big difference. And they're easily influenced, right? And so if we've got a lot of stresses and strains on our body, then our mitochondrial function can deplete. And as such, our egg quality can deplete. So mitochondrial health is certainly something worth focusing on when it comes to promoting egg quality.
Yeah, and so we specialize with diminished ovarian reserve, premature ovarian insufficiency, low AMH, and our high FSH. So most people we work with, they know all their numbers. Some of this AMH and the FSH kind of is embedded in their subconscious. Obviously, the FSH can fluctuate each cycle, and we do see AMH improve when we start to do make these targeted changes. And so I guess the other question here is what people worry about or wonder, can we test for egg quality? What's your take on that one?
Yeah, so I mean, the overall answer to that is no, you can't test for egg quality. There are things that might give us an indication as to the number of eggs you have left, but again, it's very difficult to ascertain exactly. I think really the only true way to ascertain whether egg quality could be an issue is if you've had a round of IVF and there's been issues with the embryos, right? But again, we still don't know whether that might be an egg quality issue or a sperm issue. So in short, there's no real way of testing egg quality, but we do know that if you have had rounds of IVF that have not worked, if you've had early miscarriages, if you have infertility generally, then chances are egg quality is something that we actually really do want to focus on.
Exactly. So we see many people with DOR or diminished ovarian reserve or premature ovarian insufficiency, and also they're dealing with repeat pregnancy loss. We've done some episodes on pregnancy loss recently, so definitely check those out. But and then keep going back to IVF and being told canceled cycles, or they're a poor responder, or having these losses, and all of that is just obviously emotional heartache, emotionally, as well as hard on the body as well to keep pushing it.
Mhm.
So let's talk about some factors that we need to measure here that we typically already have measured. So FSH, what are we seeing there?
Yeah, so as you say, so lots of people will be well acquainted with some of their numbers, and if you do have a diminished ovarian reserve or POI type picture, then you'll probably have those FSH figures and AMH just locked into your head. But just to dig into that a little bit, the FSH, so FSH is follicle stimulating hormone. And typically speaking, this begins to rise in the first half or the first part in our follicular phase of the menstrual cycle. So it's the follicular phase and it's follicle stimulating hormone. And the reason for that is it's our brain, so it's the pituitary gland in the brain, just telling our ovaries to start maturing and start maturing a follicle that will become the dominant follicle that cycle, right? And so it's just basically communication between the brain and the ovaries. That's all it is. I know we can think it's the be all and end all, but it is just communication, and it signals the ovaries. So it's telling the ovaries, as I say, that it's time to allow an egg to mature and to be released as in the ovulatory cycle. And so if our egg quality decreases, so if our egg quality is compromised, then one thing that can happen is that those eggs, those follicles, can become a little bit more resistant to the follicle stimulating hormone, and it means that the FSH, the follicle stimulating hormone, can get higher and higher. To try and keep up and keep that messaging up, right? And so sometimes having a high FSH could be linked to the quality of our eggs. And so it just, if you do have that high FSH picture, it's not the be all and end all. It just means, and Fab Fertile clients see this all the time, their FSH going dramatically downhill. Yes, because we're working on egg health, but also because we're resensitizing that messaging between the brain and the ovaries.
Exactly. But people with FSH in 60s, 70s, 80s and coming down below 10 and getting pregnant. So there's things we can do. And what about the estradiol?
Yeah, so estradiol, which is E2, it's a form of estrogen, and this is the estrogen that's produced mostly in the ovaries. And so it's almost the ovaries' way to be communicating back with the brain, right? And so it aligns with FSH in that it rises in that first half of the menstrual cycle. And as a follicle does become dominant, so of all our kind of small, our follicles, to be clear, are immature eggs, basically. And so we have the number of eggs that we're going to have, but they're immature. And each menstrual cycle, in a healthy menstrual cycle, one follicle containing an egg will develop and mature, and that is the one that is released that cycle. Now, if there are issues with BOR, or POI, or indeed even things like PCOS, then that brain ovarian communication can be a little bit compromised. So when we see that E2 level rising, actually we do want to make sure that it's corresponding to the FSH in order to actually make sure that FSH is a valid reading and that we can rely on it. So in that first few days of the menstrual cycle, we're looking at an estradiol level, ideally of under 50 picograms per ml, per milliliter. So that's PG per ml. And if it's much above that early on in the menstrual cycle, because we do want to see it rising, but probably not too much too quickly, right? And so if it's rising too high too quickly, sometimes it can mean that those ovaries are actually responding a bit prematurely. And in that instance, the follicle that's maturing might be kind of being released a bit early, right? And by proxy, the quality compromised that cycle.
Yeah, and then so the anti-Müllerian hormone, which I'm not sure I'd like to check when they first started testing this, because they definitely weren't testing this back when I was going through when I had premature ovarian insufficiency. It was just looking at the FSH. So like to see, I can't remember how recent this has been, but to me it's become a scare tactic for women where they're getting like the test from the various ones you can actually get at Walmart too, or you can get these tests of your AMH, and scaring women like, oh my goodness, I better go freeze my eggs and rush and get this done. And I wasn't planning on having children until later. And uh-oh. Now, it can be empowering to know your numbers. And so there's things we can do. But if people can get pregnant, like we've had people get pregnant with AMH was as low as 0.02, 0.04, 0.08, like very, very low. Anything below 1 would be considered low. Why are we scaring women that like this is, and then they're spending all this money, maybe it's covered by insurance to do egg freezing, and they think, okay, great, I've frozen my eggs, I'm going to be okay. But then they've frozen poor quality eggs, so it's a false sense of security and setting couples up for devastation in the future. So they think they've got this like little safety net here, and it hasn't worked. So if your AMH is low, like we've got to look at your whole entire body and see what's being missed. But let's talk about the anti-Müllerian hormone.
Yeah, so the AMH, it's Honestly, it's I do get sick of people talking about their AMH being low because, and not through anyone's fault of their own. It's just, as you say, it's the scare tactics. I've never known a number strike the fear of God into people's hearts more than AMH. You know, it's and it's heartbreaking to see. Um, and it's a number that people really, really hang on. And as far as I've seen, I've definitely seen it used as a tool from clinics who, say, well, this means that we need to do IVF like yesterday. And that I mean, I think, look, I'm not here to kind of conspire, but I do believe that it's a helpful tool for clinics to encourage people to go into treatment more quickly than perhaps they would have done. And I've seen people go into IVF cycles because they've been tested as low AMH by a clinic before they've even started trying naturally. And it's like, what? That's just mind blowing to me. So yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms, and one that we dig into quite regularly, I have to say, in our conversations. But it's all it is, AMH. It's a hormone. It's a type of glycoprotein, and it's released by some of the cells, the granulosa cells in those immature eggs, right? Those follicles, and it's there to help kind of protect the eggs and help to mature the eggs. And so over the span of somebody's life, whereby our eggs do gradually diminish, the granulosa cells naturally decreases and AMH also naturally decreases. So it's thought to give an estimation of the rough number of eggs that might be left for you, right? And we have this sense of time ticking, and once you run out of eggs, they're all gone. And yes, that is true, to an extent that is true, but AMH is not necessarily the most accurate predictor of the amount of eggs that you've got left, because as we say, we see it rising. We see if AMH meant that you had 10 eggs left, then how could it be that AMH increases, right? Because you don't suddenly get more eggs. And so all it is a hormonal indicator. And it's often used in conjunction with a scan, right? So with an ultrasound scan. And people would be familiar or might be familiar with the term AFC, or antral follicle count. And so the two are often used together, AMH and antral follicle count, to get a sense of how many follicles we can actually see developing in a scan as well, and what the ovaries are actually doing at different points in the menstrual cycle. So, and again, some of the terminology that I see here, I've had women come to me in tears, having been to scans where they've been told that their ovaries are like terms like withered and like empty and these kind of things. And it's like, how incredibly unhelpful to hear something like that, because it gives the impression that if your ovaries are withered or empty, that there's nothing left. Whereas actually, it's only a reflection of what is happening in that menstrual cycle at that moment in time. And that could be the byproduct of years of autoimmune disease, of inflammation and imbalances in the body that's reflected there. And yet none of that is passed on. None of that information is passed on to the women. They're just told that their ovaries are withered and shriveling up. So, it's a bit of a bugbear for me, this whole AMH and AFC thing. I think, as you say, it can be empowering to know your numbers, but let's see it as that, right? Let's see it as empowering, and knowing that actually having this information means there's probably some imbalances that need addressing in my body.
Yeah, it's not about getting the numbers and then rushing to IVF like they were designed to do, right? And the mini IVFs and aggressive IVFs and gentle IVFs, all these different, termination, terminology for IVF. It's not when you have the fertility diagnosis and you go to you go to your OBGYN, and he or she refers you off to the REI, the fertility clinic, and then off you go down a road of complete insanity and people doing 20 IVFs, and you're wondering how you even got there, and then you didn't even go back and check did you even try naturally? And the question we'll ask people, well, why did you go to like why was IVF recommended? Well, they just told me that because my AMH was low. Well, did they look at the rest of your health? Like there's studies in 2022, PubMed with Harris, and we talked about this on the podcast before, where low AMH was a poor predictor of live birth outcomes. We're looking at the wrong thing. So with that, let's kind of talk about some factors, things that we can do to improve egg health. We've talked a lot on the podcast before about diet. We like the elimination diet, which really is, but we like it. It is the gold standard to figure out if you have a food sensitivity. You got people doing all these different, keto, paleo, carnivore, plant-based, all sorts of egg quality diets. But the gold standard to figure out if you have a food sensitivity and if food is causing inflammation in your body is the elimination diet. And it's taking out the top allergens for 10 days, systematically reintroduce. We'll link an episode in here. It tells you exactly how to do it. But if we've got people intolerant to lettuce, people are intolerant to spinach, and a lot of people that we work with have non-celiac gluten sensitivity. You've got to do the elimination diet, take out gluten and dairy for 60 to 90 days. If not pregnant, then we can do the testing. If you want to fast track it, we do the testing in conjunction with the elimination diet from food sensitivity testing, genetic testing, different from what you do at your fertility clinic, and then the microbiome testing. Anything you want to say here about the diet piece?
Yeah, I think it's just that diet can help or hinder, right? And so it's yes, it's about, I think that we're generating more and more awareness now, thankfully, around the impact of ultra processed foods and, the level of exposure that we have to foods that weren't really ever designed to be foods and to be consumed by us. And the impact of some of that is, essentially it all boils down to inflammation, right? And when we have this systemic inflammatory response, it's that's an urgent need for your body. Inflammation is there as part of your kind of life or death toolkit as far as your body is concerned, and so it's a potent mechanism and it's an important mechanism. But if we have an inflammatory response day after day after day after day from the foods that we're eating, then it's going to cause problems for reproductive health. It's as simple as that, because your body is just too busy being in survival mode to be able to prioritize, oh, yes, our mitochondrial health and everything else, and to be able to even absorb the nutrients from the food that we are eating correctly. So much of it does come down to inflammation, but that can come from so many areas. And part of it is, like common sense, like, so much of the standard American diet now is inflammatory in nature, in that there's just so much ultra processed food in there. So eating real food is really important. But equally, as you say, Sarah, it's some foods you could be eating a really healthy diet, but actually if you're having an immune reaction to those foods because maybe your gut health isn't on point, maybe your immune system is just compromised, maybe you've got autoimmunity, then sometimes we can be thinking that we are eating the healthy diet, and again, we've seen clients where you look at their diet and it's exemplary, it's an amazing diet, and yet they're still struggling, that and a lot of the times when we have body symptoms like fatigue, lethargy, poor focus and concentration, and energy, like fluctuations throughout the day, and sleeplessness, and all of those symptoms, they're all signs, right? We need to listen to our body, and they're all signs that something might be wrong. Now, so yes, coming back to the food sensitivities, then absolutely we can have an immune reaction to any food, depending on the wider health of our body. So diet, super important, but it's not really about saying, okay, well, I'm going to follow this person's diet or this person's diet, because actually it's quite unique to you. And if you've been following a certain diet for a long time, then you might have nutrient deficiencies that need addressing, right? I mean, the plant-based movement continues to gain traction, and I love plants. I love eating plants, but I don't eat only plants because I would be in serious nutrient deficit if I did. And it's very, very hard to meet all of your requirements from eating only plants. So yeah, that's something that we see a lot. I mean, again, on the polar opposite side of that, the carnivore diet is again gaining traction. Like we just seem to be like polarized in everything now, right? And there's so many people advocating carnivore diet as well. And it's like, hey, yes, like we would benefit from eating the animal products, but not only animal products. Like, can we just get some balance around here? All of those things matter.
Yeah, it's not being married to one specific way of eating. If you're like married to being vegan or, plant-based, and obviously there's sometimes for religious reasons that we're eating a certain way. So we're never going to force anyone to eat meat, but then we're going to look at your blood chemistry and see, okay, are you absorbing the protein? And maybe the fact that you have a gut infection, you're eating all this food, but you're not actually absorbing any of the nutrients, and you do have a mineral or a nutrient deficiency, which we see a lot. Maybe there's heavy metals, so there's something going on in there where the diet that you're eating is not working for you. So do the elimination diet. Do that for 10 days with your partner, systematically reintroduce the foods. The podcast will tell you how to do that. We'll link it in the notes here. We want you to eat the rainbow foods, colors, different colors, more protein and fat. Like, don't be starting the day with like a muffin. Start the day with more like protein and fat, so your body's not on a roller coaster with the blood sugar side of things. And so many people tell me, I'll be like, well, how, oh, I've got diminished ovarian reserve, low AMH or high FSH. I've been trying for 2 years. How's your health? Health's pretty good. Feel fine. My health is fine. So even though you may be functioning and your health is fine, is it optimal? Like, it's not that your numbers are off and then everything you've been told everything is normal. That is not the case. This is a lazy diagnosis, especially for unexplained too. You got unexplained infertility. That is a lazy diagnosis. People are not digging deeper. And so we need to really be our own advocate and be empowered with our numbers and dig deeper to see what's being missed. And so a completely healthy person struggling, with their reproductive health, something has been missed. And that's why we love the functional nutrition, functional medicine approach, because you get your numbers, you get the data, and then you can make, targeted action changes. Blood sugar. Okay, we've Katie and I have done a podcast, a deep dive with blood sugar, but you could people with blood sugar issues, we see this a lot of a theme with repeat miscarriage, diminished ovarian reserve, premature ovarian insufficiency. You've got irregular or absent periods, ovulation disorders, and ovulation. All of this can impact your egg health, egg quality, and so insulin resistance and making sure your glucose is in the right range. So just briefly on blood sugar, because we have a whole hour podcast. We go into the deep dive on that one, but let's just give a quick overview on it.
Yeah, it's just in a nutshell is that blood, when we're thinking about that, coming back to that inflammatory response again, and overarching imbalances in the body that can impact reproductive health. Blood sugar is one of the key parts of the equation, and so really, and I know that it might seem alien to some people hearing this, but or they might think that they have no issues with blood sugar, but actually, if you're eating a diet that is based largely around carbohydrates, and especially refined carbohydrates, which a lot of Western diets are, if you're having, as you say, like a muffin or a croissant or toast or cereal for breakfast, and then a sandwich for lunch, it's so routine, isn't it? And then pizza or pasta for dinner or rice. They can all contribute to your blood sugars just doing this all day, right, on a roller coaster. And so we really need enough carbohydrate. Is not the enemy, by the way, but it does turn to glucose in the bloodstream. And so if all we're eating is a diet that is kind of based around carbohydrates and or sugar itself, then our blood sugars are going to be all over the place, and then our bodies are fighting to regain homeostasis, which is the state of balance that the body always wants to be in. And it's just like with the inflammatory piece, if the blood sugars are constantly off, then the body is always fighting, and we don't want our bodies to be fighting, because if they're fighting, they're not prioritizing reproduction.
Yeah, your glucose. Do you want to talk about some of the levels there?
Yes, so for actual glucose levels, where we want them to be sitting roughly in the 75 to 86 milligrams per deciliter, which is about 4.2 to 4.8 millimoles per liter. And then for the hemoglobin A1C, which is a marker of blood glucose over time, we're looking at between 1 and 5 international units per milliliter, or 6 and 30 picomoles per liter. Those would be the sort of the ideal ranges really for the glucose and the A1C. Lots of people have started using like continuous blood glucose monitors as well. I think we can get a bit obsessional over those, but they can be a helpful tool. If you're not sure what your blood sugars levels are doing, then they can be helpful, because a lot of people are seeing, as I say, they'll become elevated and then they will dip down, and what goes up will usually drop back down again. And it's yes, the going up is problematic, but it's the contrast between going up and then dropping back down below a suitable level that can be the issue. So we want them to be just gently undulating rather than zipping up and down.
And then another one to look at is the thyroid. This can interfere with the release of the egg from the ovaries. So like an ovulation disorder, regular menstrual cycle, increased risk of miscarriage. So looking at an optimal thyroid. Again, we've done many episodes actually on a deep dive on thyroid. So we'll kind of give you a high level overview here. But it is a theme that we see across the board with clients with repeat loss or miscarriage, pregnancy, diminished ovarian reserve, premature ovarian insufficiency, low AMH, high FSH, poor egg quality, and then people have been told their thyroid is normal. They tell me the thyroid is normal. I don't need to do anything. Is it optimal? It might be normal, but is it optimal? Why is the egg quality poor? And then you've been told it's normal. Like, it's not empowering. So it's like you need to be able to look at your numbers and what's being missed. And it's not just about looking at the TSH, it's looking at the full fat thyroid panel. For TSH, typically your REI is going to want it below 2. But we see people being told it's normal and it's 3, 4, 5, and they're wondering why they're struggling and potentially having pregnancy loss, or having, all the canceled cycles, or, the whole thing not working. Just to backtrack on this, our whole thesis on this is people worry it's early menopause. Is it really early menopause, or is it your adrenals? The adrenals impact the thyroid, which then impacts the AMH, the FSH, and the follicle count. So all of this is connected. Anything you'd like to say there on the thyroid, Katie?
Yeah, it's more or less what you just said, and then just a reminder. I always say this. I feel like a broken record, but it's to remember that our ovaries and our thyroid and our adrenal glands, they all sit on the same axis with the brain. So it's the hypothalamus and pituitary gland in the brain. They all are the control centers for those 3 sets of organs, and they all communicate with one another. So if there are issues with one, then there can be knock-on effects with the other, and it's as simple as that. Also, just to say that on the thyroid, a lot of the time what's neglected to be tested is the antibodies, because a lot of medics will say that antibodies don't matter, there's nothing you can do about it anyway. But actually, if you have high thyroid antibodies, then that's a sign of autoimmunity, right? And if there's autoimmunity going on, then we want to be able to get that under control before going into a pregnancy, because it is a risk factor for pregnancy, well, for infertility and for pregnancy loss. So we do, and there again, all of the things that we talk about all the time, the diet, the lifestyle, all of those, they all matter when it comes to helping support healthy thyroid antibodies as well.
Yeah, and if there's antibodies there, the autoimmunity can be a contributing factor if there's difficulty with the egg fertilization. So we've got people, we want to have the antibodies below 10. And so we've got people with antibodies 100, 200, 300, 400. We've had a lot of people and we're not diagnosing anything here, but we've had a lot of people that didn't even know they had antibodies, found out that they did indeed have Hashimoto's. And we see a lot of that actually with premature ovarian insufficiency too, where, oh, wait, I've got Hashimoto's going alongside with that. And, so again, there's a reason. So, and conventional medicine with autoimmune disease will throw you a pill and then you're basically off on medication for the rest of your life. we're not opposed to medication. It can be part of the solution, but you need to do the targeted diet and lifestyle changes along with it. Because a lot of times we're just been, here's a medication, bye bye, there's nothing you can do. And the body's, under, it's struggling, it's not working. So the bottom line is there's things you can do with the targeted diet and lifestyle changes, from the food sensitivity piece to the gut microbiome, to the stress with the adrenals, to your to the environmental toxins. All of this, not all at once, but all of this can then improve your egg quality.
Yeah. Yeah. And we often see the liver markers and the cholesterol markers out of balance as well in conjunction with thyroid. So it's not just about testing hormones, right? It's not just about testing hormones. It's not just about testing thyroid hormones. It's about, okay, let's look at your entire blood work of all the systems in your body and get a real sense of, okay, these are the imbalances that we're seeing. And this all maps out we connect the dots, and then we know where to put our focused attention.
Exactly. And we've done an episode all on lipids. We've done an episode on iron. We've done an episode on liver. So we've dissected all of this, but we don't look at this in silos. When we're reviewing all your testing and looking at your blood chemistry, we are then looking at the full holistic approach to this. But it's sometimes we've been told our cholesterol's off and then we're put on statin, or then we've been told our iron's low and we've got anemia and we're taking an iron pill. And then we don't realize that then that's impacting the thyroid. And then we're taking a thyroid pill. And then it just becomes all you're chasing all these symptoms, when if you look at it all together and it's like, oh wow, that's that, and that's why. And that may be why, you have poor egg quality.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And then stress, so mental, emotional stress, I can't tell you how many people that we see on this journey. I just spoke to someone yesterday too, where they were, people are on the journey to conceive. They've got a low AMH or a high FSH diagnosis, diminished ovarian reserve. They've had pregnancy loss. They are also working full time, maybe dealing with a demanding boss or a toxic workplace. Plus, because, hey, we're women and we like to do it all, they're taking a graduate program. Like, let's just load everything on. And then I want to say, how's your stress? Well, I feel pretty good. So you may feel good mentally, emotionally, but maybe your body is like, I don't think so. So the mental, emotional side of this, like maybe your body's just up in that fight or flight panic,
Yeah.
and you're not able to, the body's like, we've got to take care of you. Forget about bringing on a life. Anything you'd like to say there?
Yeah, I mean, you're just reminding me all over of myself when I was struggling to conceive, Sarah. It was when I look back now, I was, scratching my head, wondering what on earth was going on. And I was working as a nurse. I was working long hours, shift work, often night shifts. So my circadian rhythm was all over the place. I was studying nutrition. So sometimes I'd go straight from a night shift to a full day of nutrition class. And then I was like, and then I must be exercising. Like, exercise is really important. And then I'd go off and do CrossFit 3 times a week. And it's just like, oh my gosh, my body was just under so much strain, And I look back and I'm like, I didn't see it, I didn't see it. And it's easy when you're caught up in it to just be blinkered and to think that this is normal. But our obsession in the Western world of hyper productivity, it doesn't serve us.
It'll get you so far, and then the body will be like, no, no more. And so either you stop it right now and be like, how do we set some boundaries? It's not about you sitting on the couch and not doing anything, because typically, you probably have a lot of ambition and energy and want to get things done. But how do we do this in a mindful way and that it's not out of alignment? Because things will start to, whatever your first sign is that you're cracking. For me, it's the road rage, or I'm like, going on my husband. I'm like, he and I get along perfectly, but sometimes I'll be like, oh my God, I don't like your breathing, or like whatever it is. Right. And so whatever when the thing that is out of alignment for you and you're like, oh, I can't take this. It is to be, you need to pull back. And so the stress piece, we use heart math, and our coaches are training that. There's some episodes to listen to heart math. It's a simple breathing techniques to breathe into the heart space. They can get you out of that fight or flight. And so you can see, a positive path forward. So let's just talk about some supplements. Kay and I have done many episodes on a lot of these supplements actually, that are good for egg health. A lot of times people come to us, they're taking a boatload of supplements, because they're around the internet. This is what we need to do. So supplements are part of the equation, but the diet and lifestyle changes. Like you've got to make sure you get the right sleep, deal with the boundaries if you're working more than 50 hours a week. Work on if you're addicted to high intensity exercise, how do we pull it back? Not about you, sleeping on and putting your feet up, it's doing exercise that works for you. So all of that piece matters. Maybe the whole thing is you have got non-celiac gluten sensitivity, plus you have a parasite. Maybe
Mm.
that's what's causing your egg health to be off. So yes, we like the supplements, but we then start with foundational supplements, and then we go into more targeted supplements when we get testing back. So Katie, let's talk about some supplements here. What are we seeing?
Yeah, so I guess some of the more typical supplements that might be associated with egg health, I think that the most commonly known one is the CoQ10, and that's really supportive of mitochondrial function. Um, Another is omega-3. Again, it's a fatty acid that is really helpful in hormone production and energy. And we've done a deep dive just in omega-3 on its own right. Um, it is an important one. But then also things like methylfolate, really important in a process called methylation, which is important for gene transcription. And then NAC, myoinositol is can be helpful for egg quality as well. And then vitamin C, even vitamin D as well is one that we see low a lot. But again, we really recommend testing on that because we want to know what is going on with your vitamin D status before we kind of select what dose might be best for you. And then, other things like that might be imbalanced in the body more generally might be your magnesium status. And so magnesium has over 300 processes in the body, and hormones are a big part of that. And so magnesium is always, often helpful and often depleted in people. But then as it relates to gut health, we know again that gut health, the gut microbiome and the vaginal microbiome, both really, really important aspects for this overarching picture. So targeted probiotics might be helpful too. So, I've read out a list there of maybe 8 different things, and it's not to be overwhelmed by that, but it's certainly not to say, oh well, I'm going to run off and start taking all of those things either, because actually what we want to do is understand you a little better and understand your body, so that you then know that the supplements that you're investing in, because they're quite pricey, these products, you don't want to just be peeing them down the toilet. You want them to be counting. And so I think it's always worth checking in with someone who knows that they're talking about on that, because I see so many people on the supplements that just aren't right for them.
Yeah, exactly. Dyes, fillers, top allergens, wasting money, getting your supplements on Amazon, like things like that is just not recommended. You need to make sure that they're vetted, because sometimes they're saying what it is not exactly what it is. Okay, final thoughts here on egg health, egg quality. What's our final thoughts here?
Yeah, final thoughts. I feel like my final thoughts with you, Sarah, are it's always wider than what you would believe, right? So a topic as narrow as egg health, that we all obsess over, it's the primary thing in some people's minds, but it's so much more than that. The egg health is like the tip of the iceberg, and it's everything that's happened prior to that matters. So let's focus on that. Let's focus on where your imbalances are and work on those. And then the knock-on effect of that is that egg health will be positively impacted.
Which is empowering. There's things we can do. We don't need to wait around and wait for our next IVF and do another IVF if it's already failed. So, yeah, taking your health into your own hands, knowing your numbers, knowing the data, and then making a decision if or when IVF is right for you. So, thanks again, Katie.
Thanks for having me.